Now, if you couldn't tell before, I think Roblox is pretty good. Like, every community for every game is absolutely toxic, and filled with a bunch of infuriating grade schoolers who don't know how to play video games and will say every single roast they have in their arsenal to you, which usually consists of rebuttals of your mom and get on my level, noob. But there's been a recent trend in modern Roblox, and that has been JoJo games. Now, if you also didn't know, I absolutely love JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. I've made multiple videos on it in the past, but there's kind of a giant problem with all the games. They're all being mass-produced and just copies of each other in hopes of getting fame and recognition and hopefully Robux money, with almost nothing original to bring to the actual table. So I'm going to be talking about individual things about JoJo Roblox games that kind of piss me off and that need to be addressed so that better games can be made in the future. Also, I'm recording in front of a green screen so you can see all the Roblox gameplay in the background. So let's get on to the first point about JoJo Roblox games.
In my room, I beat my cup, nutted in my sock, keeping that door locked, bitch, you better knock.
Now, if there's something you haven't noticed about JoJo Roblox games, it's that all of them are kinda, exactly the same in terms of function. There are never often any new mechanics that are introduced, and nearly all of them are the exact same. Your Bizarre Adventure and Project JoJo, which I was improperly banned from for exploiting, which I didn't do, are pretty much the only unique JoJo Roblox games. Almost all the controls are exactly the same amongst all the games. E to barrage, R to do a heavy punch, T to do a long-ranged attack, F for your special, and Q to summon your stand. And I promise you, I could hop between at least 8 different JoJo games that have the exact same controls as the last, and they all feel essentially the exact same. Now, Your Bizarre Adventure is the only game that I've seen that's, tapped into the concept of worthiness for even attaining a stand in the first place. In that game, for you to properly get a stand, you need to upgrade your worthiness in order to attain one. Other than that, there's a chance of you just turning to stone and not getting a stand at all. Meaning you just wasted an arrow, which in this game is actually somewhat rare. Meaning that before you can get your stand, you kinda need to rely on fist fighting and brawling techniques unless somebody gives one to you. While in like every other JoJo game, you can look around a corner and there's an arrow, look around another, there's a Rokakaka to get rid of your stand. And speaking of the Rokakaka to get rid of a stand is also very overused and unoriginal. While very few games do this, I feel like having Poochie as a person you can approach to get your stand removed is actually a more viable solution. That's not only more unique but makes sense in the context of JoJo. But no, every game you just have Rokakakas, just chomp on a Rokakaka, oops, stand's gone. Also, all the specials and skills tend to be the exact same. Like between stands, there are almost no unique movesets across games. Oh wow, Sticky Fingers has Zipper Glide, which is its only way of transportation for some reason, despite the fact that the user could easily just dip inside of a zipper and appear in a different location, which would not only be cooler but a more useful stand ability. Ah yes, every single Killer Queen moveset that I've seen has Stray Cat for some reason, even though that's not actually a part of the original stand. But all of them need to have it because Killer Queen needs a ranged attack, even though Killer Queen's coins and sheer heart attack exists, but whatever. It makes the gameplay feel samey and boring. I feel like every single time I get off one of these JoJo games, I instantly just go to another one that's the exact same thing but with a different name. Not only that, but combat in these games are pretty boring as well. There are 90% of the time not any cool combos you can actually do with any stands, and all you have to do damage is just click on any key that's nearest to your middle finger. There's almost never any skill involved in combat with JoJo games, so it makes every single fight you have in-game, which is the main part of any JoJo game by the way, just makes it feel like, oh ho, I beat you because I have a stronger stand and your stand is weaker, therefore I win. It always comes down to who has the bigger punch rather than who has the bigger brain, which makes it lovely for a bunch of kindergartners to crowd around. Since there's no skill involved, they can be as toxic as they want without getting their asshole handed to them, often making the communities of these games just as toxic. Oh yeah, speaking of toxicity, that should be a perfect segue to the next section.
Other ways goofy, we could have a standoff. Make it rare, not just legs off.
While this isn't a problem with all JoJo games, it's definitely a prominent problem in most of them. Usually getting an overpowered stand instantly makes you the king of the server, and these stands are often easy to get if you know somebody that's good at the game. And since almost nothing in these games seem to require skill, people with OP stands tend to be absolute shit munchers to everybody in the game. A lot of the time these people will try to block you from getting other ways to upgrade your stand for no reason at all, like gatekeeping Requiem arrows or diaries. Nearly all of them do this. They'll usually just say in the chat, hey, I got a Requiem arrow, and people are going to be like, hey, can I have it since you already have the most overpowered stand in the game? And they're going to be like, no, I just wanted you to know about it, you fucktards. Thought a king like me would give lowly peasants like you Requiem arrows? I have Star Platinum the World Requiem over Heaven Act 4. What makes you think that you're even one bit worthy of speaking to me? Pitiful doo-doo burgers. This, surprisingly, makes the game very easy to hate in public servers, which will either drive people away from the game or do what some of these devs want you to do and buy private servers. Sometimes they charge 25 Robux, sometimes they charge 100. These games are basically designed to be as infuriating as possible to play in public, so you hope to buy a private server in order to boost their gains. Which, if you're a whale with too much money and free time, usually ends up being the case. Most people join these games with their friends in order to help them, and oftentimes aren't going to show that much concern for you. So I suggest playing these games with friends so you can actually get stuff in private servers. Other than that, you're probably going to rage quit and be laughed off the game.
Goofy, heard you were like a goofy. Oh, man, because I can get a Bruce Lee.
Just like everything else in these sorts of games, the items are pretty samey, and the textures tend to be pretty bad, oftentimes having no minuscule bit of realism, not much shading, and tend to make everything look pretty plastic overall. So first, let's talk about the textures. Textures and modeling for certain items tend to be pretty bad when it comes to, a lot of JoJo games. One of the most infamously fucked items is the Rokakaka fruit. In a lot of games, out of pure and utter laziness, the Rokakaka is literally just a red ball, usually with a lava texture. No spikes or anything like it is in the actual manga, just a ball with a lava texture that shouldn't even be on there. Then later on, they decided and looked at the Rokakaka for a second, and they said, wow, this looks like muddy asshole juice. And now they made it a ball with spikes, which still doesn't look like the actual Rokakaka, as the Rokakaka is more like a pear-shaped fruit. No, mango. It's more like a mango. Now the arrow is usually a pretty decent texture. The only problem is that it looks pretty, plastic. This could be solved by adding metallic textures to stuff like the edge of the arrows. One problem that a lot of JoJo games have is the lack of reflectiveness. Most stands that have pretty shiny metal outers like the world don't tend to have that displayed in their models, making them of course all look like toys once again. It doesn't even need to be small things like Star Platinum's golden head thing. It's the fact that all the stands have really flat textures just in general, big and small parts. It makes every model look the same and have zero uniqueness or quality feel to them. It's like they're all lazily butt-fucked together in order to make a new, stand layout just to fill a roster. And if you're saying it's just gonna lag the game, you can always have the option in the JoJo game settings in order to turn down the graphics and lower it from HD mode, making it work for people who appreciate the detail and people who don't want to lag. Now let's talk about the items. I'm gonna list at least 6 items that every single JoJo game seems to have. An arrow, a Rokakaka, a frog, a stone mask, a Requiem arrow, Chuck Norris's pubic hair. All these items tend to be pretty easy to find and nobody actually cares or uses them unless it's like a stand arrow or a steel ball. They tend to keep a pretty limited list of items, either because they couldn't think of any or they just thought that those were the only ones that they would need in a JoJo game. That or they overload the game with a bunch of bullshit items. For example, adding a Pokemon plush to get fucking cum stain platinum and a bunch of other reskins of the same 2 fucking stands I see plastered in every goddamn game. Why are there a million reskins of Star Platinum in the world in every single game? But we'll have to get back to that. Actually, you know what? No, fuck it. We're gonna get straight into the next topic.
PP got a sister, but that PP got some blisters. Just like PP is so clean to touch your butt while we're playing Twisted.
I guarantee you, if you look at one JoJo game and look at another, they have almost the exact same stand roster. The same clump of stands they think can be resold and repackaged back to everybody in a different game again. Despite the fact that we've seen them a million times already in every other JoJo game and they're boring to play as now. There's almost nothing new when it comes to these things. And believe me, there are a ton of stands that they could be adding, but they very specifically choose not to add in order to anally dominate their roster with a bunch of Star Platinum and the World reskins. Why are there so many reskins? It's like every single developer just sucks the anal juice out of every single developer they see making another JoJo game and spit it back into their product with the same moveset, same roster, and same fucking reskins. Usually with absolutely no unique ability added to them whatsoever. Oh, Star Platinum under Hell? That's just Star Platinum over heaven. But again, Star Platinum the Earth? That's just Star Platinum. But fucking reskin. Shadow the fucking world? That's just the world! This makes me want to cry. Because with the amount of reskins added, they could have added actually interesting stands. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna go through a bunch of stands, part by part, that could be incorporated in JoJo games that 99% of the time aren't. Jeb. This is one of the most confusing things, since Jeb is a pretty much entirely combat-based stand, so it could feasibly work just like literally any other long-range stand that they already implemented in these games work. It could travel along in a puddle along the floor, and attack using its claws to cause bleed damage. Not only that, but it can bind and even constrict its victims. Eyes of Heaven literally shows you all the potential this stand has for a fighting game, and it's still never used. Bad company. The reason this stand also isn't in that many JoJo fighting games also makes me wish for death. Because this stand has a lot of combat potential. Likely its barrage attack would consist of soldiers firing. A heavy may be some of the rockets that are launched by some of the machines inside of the actual show. You can send them after an item in view like Harvest. You can barrage them with missiles and gunfire. This stand has a lot of potential that isn't looked at in JoJo games. Oasis. This is literally a crime among nature. This stand is entirely combat-based, just like White Album, and it's a suit stand. Its ability allows you not only to barrage, but increase damage on your barrages, dive in the ground for more mobility, fire damaging spit shots, and even melt people. But no, fuck this stand with a lot of move capabilities. We want Star Platinum under the fucking ass cheek. Purple Haze Distortion as an evolution of Purple Haze. While this isn't a canon story, it still feels pretty accurate to the actual series, and 90% of the stands that they add that aren't in the original JoJo aren't even from light novels. They're usually just fanon bullshit they came up with, so this is honestly a bit more of a breath of fresh air. Now normally Purple Haze's virus damages the user, but with Distortion that doesn't happen anymore. The stand would be just as powerful and destructive, if not more, but it would eliminate the risk while using it, and possibly even cancel the virus of other Purple Haze users. Highway to Hell. Highway to Hell would allow you to target a person with your stand, and make every single bit of damage that you take do the same amount of damage as the person you're linked to. This stand would be more useful in boss fights than anything, but it's still painfully glossed over in a lot of JoJo games. Jumpin' Jack Flash. The stand can fire projectiles of any kind due to its spinning centrifuges on its wrist, and can also turn a person to the center of a zero-gravity environment as described in the manga, meaning that these people would be less affected by gravity, making them slower and easier to hit. Not only that, but it'd have basic barrage and normal attacks like that, of course. Planet Waves. Why the fuck do people pass this stand up? This stand literally drags down fucking meteors from the sky. Imagine what kind of shit you'd be able to do with this stand. Meteors of different sizes and speeds. Some might be homing and do AoE damage, stuff like that. This could be an awesome stand to have in a JoJo game. Cream Starter, one of the most underrated stands in the entire JoJo franchise. Because this stand isn't a punchy ghost, a lot of people don't realize the potential and abilities of this stand. Not only is this stand good for healing yourself and others, it can also be used to blind people, suffocate them, and even make their necks fucking explode. In a silent way. I don't know why, but this stand is often just never talked about and completely ignored. This stand essentially has the same ability as Echo's Act 2, where it can attach a sound on any surface and make the effect of said sound happen to the user rather than just happen in general. The difference is that it isn't limited to the letters themselves, only the things that the letters are imprinted on, meaning that In a Silent Way has a bunch of different attack moves. For example, Slice, which could do a lot of bleed damage and potentially cut off limbs. Whoosh, which could deflect ranged attacks. Boom, which would make people explode on contact, though not killing them, but giving them an incredibly high damage count. 20th Century Boy. While the stand also isn't a punchy ghost, it has a good chunk of moves that it could use. For example, enhanced weaponry, like pistols and rifles. Normal absolute defense, which they can use for 20 seconds before eventually dying after a text appears saying "and then he stopped thinking," which could be a cool reference if you just spam the stand too long. And then absolute defense kamikaze, where the user would have dynamite strapped to their body and would explode without dealing any damage to themselves. The stand has a lot of suicidal move potentials like this, and it would be pretty cool to see them in game. Too bad these game developers don't actually think about any other stand other than Star Platinum in the world fucking jacking each other's cocks off. Nut King Call. The stand is also painful not to see in game. I feel like the moveset would consist of a normal barrage and heavy punch, and a second barrage that adds screws. And then by pressing Y, eventually those screws will detach, leaving one person limbless and doing a good chunk of damage. And its highest damage move would be Mass Disassemble, where all body parts would be unscrewed at the same time, dealing a good chunk of damage, and possibly killing instantly if they're at a certain amount of health. I am a rock. It would have pretty normal stand attacks, though those would be pretty weak, and its ability Selective Attraction, which makes it so any individual person or people would be attracted to a certain object, and those objects barrel towards them until they die, or they kill the user. Doobie Wah. The stand would be similar in a way that it sicks onto an opponent. The way Doobie Wah works is that the more a person breathes, the more powerful it becomes. So if the person was sprinting, or jumping, or using Hamon, it would do a lot of damage. Not only that, but there would be certain moves that would do bleed damage and certain paralysis moves, allowing it to be a pretty good long-range stand. Alright, now I'm going to get a little more onto some non-canon stands that are still from pretty decent pieces of media. Well, some are pretty decent pieces of media. Satanic Coupler. This stand can materialize itself into a giant train, which can be upgraded to do more damage. This stand can be used for transportation and long-range attack. The Cure. This stand absorbs living organisms' wounds, healing them in exchange for your own body's damage. However, at a certain amount, this stand will become incredibly large and go berserk, attacking anybody around you, as well as doing massive damage. Public Image Limited. This stand is a bit like Sex Pistols, except each shot that lands will weaken and absorb the power of the person hit by the sniper bullet. Not only would this make for good long-range fights, but it's also interesting for the status ailment it induces. Dolly Dagger. This causes 70% of all damage that she takes to be transferred to another user, who is reflected within the blade of the dagger, causing only 30% of the damage to be taken to the user. It would be a brief move that could be used frequently, since there's going to be a slightly shorter cooldown, but if the user were to use too many melee attacks with the sword, the blade would get bloodied, requiring the user to clean it before any more damage can be reflected. U-Boat. U-Boat is an army of submarines that go inside of people and shoot giant missiles. It would be pretty much like the mini sheer heart attacks of Killer Queen Alternate Universe, but it can also be turned into one large submarine by combining all the submarines together, increasing damage and making it work as less of a long-range stand. And lastly, Blob. This demon creature is able to create tornadoes, which can not only suck people in and do damage, but can be sent as projectiles to cause damage across the map. Maybe even a large AoE tornado that sucks up a lot of players. But hey, those are just some of my ideas, I guess. I doubt any actual dev is going to want to listen to it, too busy beating their dicks to furry platinum. But these are just a good chunk of my problems with modern JoJo games. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you want to see more content like this, roasting Roblox, then make sure to like and subscribe. Peace out, bitches.